The All-American Half Pounder. 2 pure beef patties, lettuce, tomato. Singles going.
Welcome to another episode of Singles Going Steady. My name is Chuck Mims. I'm going to be the guest host today. We're going to turn the tables a little bit, and we're going to interview Steve and A, and we're going to start talking about the Beef People and how they first got the whole project going. So, Steve, A, if you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick.
Yeah, I'm Steve McGowan. I'm half of the Singles Going Steady team and the Beef People, and
I'm the another half.
Right.
I'm Adrienne Meddock, and of the Beef People and of Singles Going Steady, the podcast.
And we appreciate you being here with us today, Chuck, and talking to us. We want people to get to know us a little bit.
Absolutely. And what was it that really drew you guys to creating the Singles Going Steady podcast to begin with?
Well, we felt the need to sort of, we hadn't spoken to each other in a quarter of a century. And, it seems like there's lower barriers to sharing music and sharing stories. And
Yes.
a podcast just seemed a natural way for us to be able to talk to each other and talk to others about things that we like and enjoy.
Yeah, both of us are extremely into music of that period.
I mean, definitely avid record collectors.
Yes, and we really wanted to kind of share music that meant a lot to us in one way or another, or bands that we may have played with or may have booked or influenced us. And we both kind of really love singles, and we think the idea of the single is like the pop perfection thing, and that's part of our motto.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's take it back a little bit. When did you guys first actually meet?
We met at a high school Model United Nations conference
Really?
at Winthrop College.
Yes, we weren't
Wow.
geeks or anything.
I represented the Palestinian Liberation Army organization.
And
PLO.
I was representing Cuba, so naturally we got along quite well.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you both had a common interest in the same type of music?
Well, we kind of
Pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been an insomniac and listened to a lot of college radio and jazz, and that was the early days of the DIY movement, local bands being played on overnight on the college radio shows, and it was like, something's going on, and this is interesting. So that was a logical connection for us to make with each other.
So we're talking about 81, 82?
Oh, before that.
Yeah.
79, 80.
Right.
We met in 80.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And my father, and I was actually born in Scotland, and my parents moved here when I was 2. And my father was in a rock and roll band in Scotland in the 50s, and they did kind of the Cliff Richard and the Shadows type stuff with the ties and the suits, and they all did the moves with the guitars and everything.
Yeah.
And, they were quite popular, and my dad was in management for a while and knew a lot of people. He knew Donovan, and he knew the Rolling Stones. He knew Andrew Loog Oldham and people like that. And there was always music in my house. And I can just remember from a very young age just playing Beatles records all day long, Monkees, Donovan. My dad had all the records, and he would let me play them. So I was always into music.
I'm sure the Beatles, Stones, Kinks.
Yes, definitely the Beatles and Stones. Just growing up from that, I remember we were living in Massachusetts. I remember going into Boston and buying the Sex Pistols record pretty much the week it came out, and everything kind of changed after that.
When was your first band, Steve?
Well, the first version of the Beef People involved myself and my high school friend Sven Stenberg. and we started a band, and it was with Fitz and Russ and Jim McNeely, and
Who were later the Popular Mechanics.
Right. They went on to become the Popular Mechanics, who came up at the same time we did.
So this is Beef People Mark 1.
So
Right.
this is
the very early version of it.
This is 80, 79.
No, it would be about 81, 81 82.
Okay.
Maybe even 83.
Yeah, it was a little later before we really started playing. I was in college, and that's where I met Fitz and Russ. Jimmy and Sven were from high school, from Eastside High. And so we basically just did covers, and Sven wrote some of the songs, and I was involved. I was a guitar player, but I didn't sing, and I didn't really write the songs. And then they moved on, and they left. And so it was just me and Sven, and we and Jimmy, and we got Adrienne in to play bass, and Ken Norton from high school to play keyboards.
And Adrienne, did you play bass prior to?
No, no, I did not.
How did you? What drew you to the bass?
They needed someone to play bass.
It was definitely DIY.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she picked it up pretty fast and pretty well too.
Were you aware of anybody, other females playing bass at the time? Kim Gordon, was she even on?
No,
on the
no,
radar?
she was not a thing. I don't think she'd picked up the bass when I picked up the bass.
I don't think so.
There was a band because I was in school at UNC after high school days up in North Carolina, and there was a local band, the X-Teens, that had a female bass player.
Yeah, I remember the X-Teens.
And when we went to pick out my bass in Atlanta, they brought this beautiful Sunburst Jazz out, and I was like, no, there's another girl bass player with one that looks like that. So that's how we ended up picking out my bass, because I wanted one that looked different.
Right.
So it was totally superficial. But yeah, I don't really have like strong influences on my style of playing, if you even want to call it that. But I just learned to play Beef People songs.
Right.
Okay.
We weren't really good enough to play a lot. We weren't good enough to play a lot of covers, so we wrote our own songs.
Right.
What was there a particular ethos you guys were going for? A
DIY.
Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to play our own music.
Just to rock out.
Yeah, and just play our own music and get it across. And we eventually learned covers, but it was all about original. And we were really probably one of the first bands in the area that really just played mostly original music, The Popular Mechanics were a great band, but they mostly did 60s punk type stuff, They were very good at it, but they did some original stuff, but not a lot,
And then Sven had the Gummy Bears.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there were a number of bands that came out of the scene that we kind of started,
What other bands were current?
Well, you had the Gummy Bears. You had the Tim Wooten's band.
Oh yeah, the Blow Up.
The Blow Up, which was actually before that was called the Peach Puffins.
Right.
And they were kind of a band.
I named the Peach Puffins.
Yes.
Right.
And you had a band that was
absolutely the Innocent Color Boys.
That's right.
Probably the. Best not to talk too much about those guys. But,
no, not at all. You guys are great. And Mike Lusko was always having some kind of band. After that,
the Peach Puffins, though, that came from a Dukes of Stratosphere.
It was the time there was the Lime Spiders and there were all these other things, and that was just like a riff. Joey and I riffed, and
you named them, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so you came up with that name.
Yes.
Okay. Well, who came up with the name The Beef People?
That was me, I think. Just thinking about Big Star and,
yeah, all the great bands are named after grocery store chains.
Right, exactly. So we were
so
definitely...
Bilo used to have the cows on the top of the grocery store?
Yeah, the kids in high school were always stealing the cow off the roof. That was the thing to do.
And of course, if you're not in the area, the Beef People is the slogan of a grocery store here, Winn-Dixie.
Right.
In the Carolinas.
Used to be their slogan. It isn't. I don't think it is anymore, but...
No, we drove them out of that.
Yeah. We talked a little bit, Steve, about your influences in high school with the British invasion, and Sex Pistols, but with the Beef People, what were you really drawing upon to?
Well, the way I learned to play the guitar was really I came from both poles. REM was coming up, and I learned a lot of REM type stuff. And I was also really, really into Black Flag.
Yeah.
We used to do Nervous Breakdown. And so, from one extreme to the other. And Elvis Costello was big. I had, Adrienne actually got me the Elvis Costello songbook, which was just like Chinese algebra. It was impossible. But I worked and worked and worked and worked, and I learned how to play most of the songs. And that's how I learned all the weird chords and changes and stuff that I know. And so between Elvis, Husker Du, Black Flag, REM, it all kind of melted together, And
you can definitely hear that. I was listening to the CD that you burned for me for the past couple of days, and you can hear that not quite punk, not quite what became American indie rock, but that it was this beginning, that sort of SST sound that's you heard on the like Zen Arcade, and sometimes it's like your vocals sort of remind me of Grant Hart a little bit.
No, that's a compliment, definitely.
Is there any type of vocalist that you were not copying, but heavily influenced by?
Besides Elvis, I wouldn't say, because really I couldn't sing when we started. I couldn't sing. I couldn't play at all. And we just learned, we just learned by rehearsing a lot and playing a lot, but it wasn't like I want to sound like X, whatever band. We just did our thing, and it came out the way. I think the influences are there, One of the things we talk about when we talk about the Beef People recordings and the songs that we wrote, because Adrienne wrote songs and I wrote songs and Ken wrote songs.
And you guys definitely shared vocal duties.
Yeah, but we're all over the map. We don't sound like one thing. Sometimes we're kind of soft and jazzy, and sometimes we're kind of crunchy and hardcore-y, and it's been referred to as like a mixtape sometimes, we are hard to pigeonhole, and a lot of people couldn't deal with that, because it's like you don't have that one sound, that most bands have a sound, We're all over the place, and
it wasn't even like any of us had a distinctive style of writing. I mean, of course, like Ken's songs were heavily keyboard,
obviously,
being the keyboard player, but sometimes you wrote the lyrics and I wrote music, and Vicky Verky,
exactly.
And sometimes I wrote both of them.
We do it together,
but,
or we do it together.
Yeah.
So what was it like trying to promote yourselves, book shows? Where did you play?
Well, we played here in Greenville. We ended up adopting the place on Pleasantburg called Studio B as our de facto home, and
so many shows there.
We
negotiated to have Tuesday nights,
right?
Because it occurred to me that the bands that we were traveling to see, either up to Chapel Hill Triangle area of North Carolina or down to Athens or Atlanta, to see that those folks had days off, and it's like, why don't they come crash on our couch?
Right.
I'll feed them spaghetti. We'll book a show on a Tuesday night. That way, when they're doing a Saturday or Sunday in North Carolina, and then they have the next weekend in Georgia, that whatever little bit of change they pick up on the way in Greenville, that it'll allow us to book them. It'll be a network for us, for our band. And that it just seemed like it would be a good thing, and we would make it a very low effort thing for the band to participate in, because it was on 85, and give them a free place to stay.
Come and play for a little bit of money, or have the night off.
And this is when you created Zub.
Yes.
Yeah, this is one of the many Zub efforts.
Yes.
Zub promotions.
Right.
Was Zub meant to be initially a promotional title, or a record label, or just everything?
It started as a record label.
Yeah, well, it was a business entity.
Right.
And part of this is I have a very strong entrepreneurial bent. So, and my dad had his own. Always had businesses going.
Right.
And so it's like, well, we need a company, and it will do these things.
Mm-hmm. We put out our cassette.
Yeah.
Which we are going to be re-releasing in the next year. That on the album that we're getting together, and then we put out a single, a vinyl single, and that was done under Zub Records.
Right, so booked bands.
Was a record label,
and
is a record
we had
label.
a zine
The
that promoted everything.
The Zub Alert.
Right.
Yeah, Zub Alert.
Mm-hmm. So the Tuesday night thing really grew really fast. We bought a PA. Well, we got a little loan. We bought a PA. We had our own sound
We had to dress
system.
up and go to the Greenville bank,
Right,
and get a business loan for
Right.
Zub for the PA.
And we have a van, and it grew very quickly. We got a lot of interest in bands wanting to come and play, and we ended up booking a lot more than just Tuesday nights. There was a time there where we booked.
Yeah.
I remember the Flaming Lips.
Right.
Yeah, Flaming Lips might be the best that still existing band.
Maybe the Neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we had the
Neighborhoods.
neighborhood several times, and we played out with them and other venues.
They were definitely our friends. They were actually the reason we started booking bands. We played with them up in Raleigh, and they were so amazing. I was just like, we have to book this band.
They were a Boston band, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, still are.
Yep. Still playing. And we had a connection with a lot of the Boston bands through Bob Lawton and a lot of the Homestead type bands. And
He was a booking.
booking agent. And we got a lot of those bands that way. And
Did you guys book the Meatmen too?
yeah, we were involved with that. We did that with Manifest Records.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But that was quite a show, and we did bands like Naked Ray Gun, and there
Squalls.
was everybody, Connells, you name it. If they were coming through, we booked them.
It seems that back during those days, there was a feeling that Greenville could have been a bit more of a music hub than it actually became.
Mm-hmm.
Some can say there's a renaissance going on right now in Greenville when it comes to local music.
Mm-hmm.
But do you guys think it was just the nature of communications at the time, the lack of social media, that kept it from really exploding?
I felt like we were pretty successful.
No doubt. Yeah.
The Beef people, we would get 200 or 300 people when we played. That's a lot of people, in a club. And people would consistently come out to see music.
Tuesday New Music Night was a
week.
thing. Some people would come just because
it was
of
there.
the event. Right. On Tuesday night, I'll go see who they have. Maybe I'll like them, maybe I won't. And it was like $3, $5.
Yeah. And I think the social media thing and all that is a detriment to people going to see music. It seems like people like to stay at home and be on their computers now. But that's my personal, get off my lawn opinion.
Oh, yeah.
There was definitely a scene back then where people would go to see music. I don't know if that's as big of a thing now as it used to be. Maybe I'm wrong,
It seems that with the radio room in town, that there's a lot of people just going out just to go to the radio room. Doesn't really matter who's playing,
right?
Which is a good thing.
That is a good thing. Because they'll see bands that they didn't know about.
How often did you guys tour?
Well, there was a couple of years there we toured quite extensively. We played probably over 100 dates a year.
We played a lot here, but we played Columbia, Athens, Atlanta, Chapel Hill, Winston-Salem,
Asheville.
Greensboro, Asheville,
Charlotte. So we stayed pretty busy. We played a lot of places. We played with a lot of good bands, and they came down and played with us here in Greenville. We did a lot of touring, some successful, some not as.
Very regional,
Yes.
regional. We never did the, like the reach out to New York.
Right.
Or,
We never did the big tour.
But we were working. I mean,
Yeah.
we weren't making a living off Zub. We were making a living for Zub.
Right.
So it was another mouth to feed,
Right.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But what we did allowed us to do the cool booking, to be able to
Right.
play our own music.
Right.
So you guys reunited after how many years?
It's been at least 25.
At least 25.
years.
Around 25.
Yeah.
What is the vision going forward for the project?
Well, you get to a point, and we have this music that we recorded a long time ago in the 80s, and both Adrienne and I are very critical about our own stuff, but after a long enough period, you can listen to it and not be so critical, and you can say, hey, this is pretty good. I think maybe we should put this out. So we decided that we wanted to start releasing our old material, and we wanted to reactivate the label and maybe release records by some other bands from the time. Hopefully we can get to that point. So in order to do that, we wanted to try to promote it with the podcast, because we love talking about music. We love talking, telling people about cool, interesting singles that they may or may not know about. And
It's almost proselytizing.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because I find, people just don't know, and that there are things. It's interesting to me,
Yeah.
things that remain popular and well known, or have become well known, that were really not on anyone's radar
Right.
in any real serious way back at the time, and many things that really deserved love back then, and definitely deserve it now, are going unnoticed.
Right.
So a chance to sort of get some eyes, get some ears on some things that we really love and care about.
And the fact that we're older people now, and
We're not
we,
getting younger.
we remember a lot of things that the kids don't remember, and
Talk about them while we still remember them.
Exactly. We used to use typewriters and dial phones.
I was thinking about, we had a phone call back because we lived in different states,
Yeah.
and there were little things like the phone rate used to go down at 11 o'clock, and I made the mistake of calling you at like 10:57, so I had like a $75 phone bill
Right.
from a call to you. So
Right.
I mean, things like that are sort of interesting artifacts that
Exactly,
people just
yeah.
don't,
You just forget
Yeah, and
all that was going on. Yeah.
1980 dollars.
One of the podcasts we talk about, Adrienne especially, was talking about how you would find out the lyrics to songs, that they would actually be in magazines. They would have magazines with song
Oh,
lyrics.
yeah.
Because there was no internet, you couldn't
Right.
look things up, and it was a different time.
Yeah.
And we're trying to just give our perspective on the music and recommendations for other things as well. Part of our Zub universe.
Right. Things that we like, things that are cool, things that we think others will like.
Right.
So there's potentially a live show in the works.
I would put it in the potential category
definitely.
more than in the works category.
We're hoping to have the release out, the first record out, within a year.
Yeah, we're not saying what year.
Yeah.
And this is
right.
going to be a vinyl release.
Yes. And you've heard some of it. And if we put that out, I'm sure we'll play somewhere. We'll more than likely play at Horizon. Probably play in Durham, right?
Yeah.
So,
In the front yard.
yeah.
You guys are pretty busy. Adrienne, you're what is your official title professionally?
It's secret. Let's say I am in the education field
Gotcha.
at the post-secondary level.
And Steve, you're thinking about possibly a studio.
Yeah. I mean, and I have owned a recording studio for many, many years in the past. And I think we're trying to maybe put something together. for the future. We'll see. I've always been involved in music. I still do sound, and I still do recordings, and it just never ends.
Did you record one of David Barbie's?
I did.
Bands?
We did a demo with Mercyland. They were friends of ours, and they came and recorded at my studio, and we played with them a number of times. They were an excellent band.
He has a pretty nice studio.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. He's done very well. He has. So when it comes back to Singles Going Steady, do you see this as an ongoing project that you want to stick with, that you want to just take it as it goes? I'm sure
both of those things, an ongoing project that we will take as it goes.
Yeah.
We're excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, and we keep thinking of things. Oh, we got to talk about that, or this connects to that, or because you get ideas everywhere.
Yeah,
but,
we were at the George Clinton Parliament Funkadelic show the other day, and while we were waiting, we came up with 30 more.
Yeah.
Songs,
30
singles
more songs
that we wanted to do. Yeah. So it never ends.
Any you want to share? Any?
I think Mercyland was on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the neighborhoods
was on the list.
Okay.
In the hoods.
So. There's so much great.
And George Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely.
Yeah. He was the man.
I just discovered I have 2 copies of the 45 One Nation Under a Groove.
Wow.
So I think that's begging to be talked about.
I think that's telling you something
I have
right
there. I have a picture sleeve, and we just bought at the head shop.
Right.
I got one without the picture sleeve.
That's right.
Going back to the Beef People record that's maybe coming out in a year.
It's coming out.
Yeah, it's coming out for sure.
Are you thinking about distribution? Is it going to be mail order? Is it going to be on your website? How people are going to get it?
Yes, we're going to do it through the website, the Zub Records website, and
which is zubrecords.com.
Thank you, kids. And
zubrecords.com.
And that's where you go to find the podcast as well, the Singles Going Steady podcast. We will do a limited run, not too many copies. They'll be numbered, and we're pretty proud of it. We've got most of it mastered now. It's not completely complete altogether yet, but we're nearly there.
Well, let's go ahead and hear a track from the upcoming Beef People record.
Let's listen to Interstate USA.
Okay,
that was the almost hit, right?
Yeah, well, this is the one we thought that the people are going to love this, and because Ken, it's one of Ken's songs.
Yes.
And Ken was just like a melody monster.
He sure is.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Interstate USA, the Beef People.
I really love your vocals on that track, Adrienne. Was there any type of vocalist that you were emulating or influenced by?
Well, nobody in particular. I just sort of, everything was so DIY and sort of like do what you can do. So it was like, what did my voice do? What suited my vocal range? So I just sang it, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a good contrast to Steve's gravelly, raucous voice at times.
It can be a little sing-song. You can tell that my main singing experience had been in campfire songs and the Girl Scouts.
Yeah. Nice.
And we have a second record that we're very excited about, too, that we recorded. We recorded over 30 songs that have never been released.
Where was this recorded?
At my studio, the Cafe Pleasuremantic Studios. 30 songs that nobody's ever heard. I think you've heard a few of them.
Now, the record that's coming out was recorded
before that.
Was recorded at the Beef Nest.
Yes, with Ashley Davis. And at Sundown Studios, the single.
Do you guys want to talk about what the Beef Nest is at all? Or?
Well, we used to both work at the cafe and then some downtown.
In Greenville, South Carolina.
And the upstairs was kind of abandoned.
Yeah, it had been a club before.
Yeah, and a ballet school, too.
And there were, like, the remnants. We were allowed to use it if we cleaned it up.
Right.
And were just, like, sacks of clothes. And I remember a 10-year-old TV guide, all sorts of fantastic sort of things that we found up there. But we rehearsed there during the whole time the band was together.
Right.
And
we did recording up there as well.
I think I remember a lot of windows.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Back when downtown was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would be the only thing happening at night when we were rehearsing, because downtown was absolutely dead.
Right.
Drop a pin.
It was a long time ago.
Must have been 84, 85.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't horses in the street, but it was a while ago.
Yeah, there was no Hyatt.
There was a Hyatt.
Yeah, it had just been built.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Because that's where our roommate worked.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Your memory's so much better than mine.
Well, I think it takes two to have a memory.
Yes.
I think like one will spark one that the other one doesn't remember.
So what else, guys? This has been an awesome addition to the Singles Going Steady. Anything else you guys want to talk about? You want to
maybe talk a little bit about how we're recording, despite the fact that you've done all this sort of like heavy lifting in recording. We've tried not to be fussy about what we're doing with the podcast.
Okay.
We want to make a professional podcast, but we're not recording it in studios. I mean, we're in a house right now in Greenville, and we do the same in Durham, and we try to make it sound as good as we can. But the whole point is we're talking with you about music.
Exactly.
It's casual. We're not talking at you. We're talking with you.
Exactly.
And we want to keep it that way.
And it's not a fact dump. I mean, because there's Wikipedia,
right?
And if you want,
we'll
to
have
know
links to that.
What what all the lyrics are, who what the drum kit was. You can find that all online now. But it's really more about impressions.
And
about
what it meant to us.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't seem that you're getting too heavy with the theory of any of the songs, or the chords, or the how it was recorded. You're more talking about what it was like to listen to this particular single for the first time.
Or this is our version of the Beef People covering this song.
Exactly.
We'll play you a little of that just to make you confused.
It's more like a personal history.
Yes.
A personal history and a personal impression, personal critique.
We really like this song. This is why we think you should listen to it.
Right.
This is what's likable about this song.
So that's where we're really coming from.
Perfect.
We love to talk about music, just like you.
I'm hoping you guys are going to do Sonic Reducer as a single, potentially Rocket from the Tombs.
Yes. That would
Put
be
it
good.
on the list.
Yes, we will.
Of course, Final Solution. I'm pushing for that as well.
Yes, Perubu for sure. So there's so much to cover.
Great, guys.
That'll be in 61 through 90.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, guys, this has been awesome.
Okay. Well, Chuck,
thanks for allowing me to. Yeah, thanks for allowing me to do this. This has really been a pleasure, and look forward to the rest of the Singles Going Steady installments and the Beef People LP coming out on Zub Records.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, we will talk to you soon. Please listen to the podcast.
Right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
To learn more about the artists and recordings we just talked about, visit our website at zubrecords.com and click on the Singles Going Steady icon.
You'll also find links to the persons, places, and things we recommend, and much more.
You can find episodes of Singles Going Steady on our website or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Singles Going Steady is brought to you by the power and majesty of Zub Records. Zub Records. Smart sounds for sharp people.